So if you want to ask yourself some further questions or think about just a few more areas connected to healthier, safer cultures, the first one you might think about is, are we a community that listens well? So that includes past events that have happened in your community's life. That might also include harm that's happened there. Has it been listened to? Has it been addressed? It's a really important question to ask, but generally as a community, are you a community that listens well? Another question that you might want to ask yourself is how well you communicate. And what we mean by that is, what messaging do you give out to others? That might be about the way that your buildings look, it might be about what you have on the outside of them. What does it say about you as a community? What does it say about your mission? What does it say about your practices? But also, how do you communicate within your setting? So one example of this that I think is really important is that in some work we've done recently on domestic violence in a Christian faith setting, there was a participant who said that she told her minister that she had had an experience of domestic violence, and she had an overwhelmingly positive response. But at the end of her quote, she said, "I took a great risk because I didn't know that would be the response, because at no point in the community had it been communicated that this was a safe place to tell my story." So the real question, how do we communicate who we are externally, but also how do we communicate internally? So following on from what we've already talked about, how do you manage power in your communities, both formal power and informal power? How do decisions get made? Are people really aware of that? How do people get involved in the decision making? If you're a community, how do you hear the different voices within your communities when you're making decisions? So it's just really good to reflect on the use of power. And there's some really good exercises to help you do that. So this comes back as well to how inclusive we are as a community. So think about whose voices are included in decision making. So when you're making your decisions for the future, who do you include in that decision making process? And how do you make the choice about who's included in that? It's a really good question for us to ask, and it's a really good way for us to reflect on how power is managed both formally and informally. Power in and of itself is not a bad thing, but actually how we use it really matters, and reflecting on that is really helpful. So other ones which might not sound as interesting, but building effective structures. So what are your written and unwritten structures within your organisations? What are your lines of accountability? Are people clear? Do they know them? Can they reflect on them? Do they have a voice to speak into how they might be improved? Again, a really good set of questions for you to think about. So the fifth one, establishing good governance structures. What are your governance structures? Are they communicated clearly? What are your lines of accountability? Do people know what they are? Can they reflect on them? And how far, when you're thinking about governance, do you think about healthier, safer cultures? Is that something that you're thinking about when you're reflecting your governance structures? Are you doing the job of looking at what's going well and what's really healthy, and anything that might be unhelpful or even unhealthy? So can you look at your governance structures with the lens of healthier, safer cultures? And finally, but really importantly, are you modelling safe behaviours? It really does matter, the behaviours that we model in our cultures. We're teaching people in our communities about what safe behaviour looks like. So what kinds of behaviours are being modelled? Are they safe? Are they healthy? And are they addressed if they're not? So that's a really important question. And putting all these areas together can just give you another added layer of thinking. None of this is supposed to be critical of what you've already got. It's asking you to celebrate what you're doing well, and then to think about areas that you might want to develop, and then to have the courage to develop them.